is Krzysztof Baranowski. He's famous for being the first Pole and the ninth man ever to sail around the world single-handed on the eastbound route. But there is much more to his story. When he was 25, he became the youngest yacht captain in Poland. Chris's first long voyage was a sailing and scientific trip around South America aboard the yacht Śmiały, Brave. Although Chris had a captain's license, he agreed to work as a cook for the entire voyage, as this was the only vacant position. Unfortunately, he had neither the inclination nor the skill for cooking. It was a nightmare for him to have to cook. But he wanted to sail so badly that he managed to feed the whole crew for more than a year and a half. Quite an experience for everyone. But for him it was worth it just to see the glaciers in Patagonia. A few years later, after the voyage aboard Śmiały, he convinced the Polish Yachting Association to sponsor his participation in the Observer's single-handed transatlantic race All-Star. In order to qualify for this race, Chris had to win a sailing competition in Poland and have the use of yacht. These were by no means easy tasks during that time in Poland, but Chris achieved them both. Chris won the competition and coordinated the building of the yacht Polonez. And here is the Polonez. Chris was the first participant in All-Star to come from behind the Iron Curtain. His starting number was 10. Eventually, Chris finished 12th out of the 30 who completed the race and was the second compared to yacht with similar length. The blue line marks Chris's All-Star route, but Newport was not the end of the voyage. After the All-Star race, he decided to go further and to circumnavigate the globe single-handedly on the eastbound route. By the time he reached Australia, halfway through his voyage, he was 34. As the ninth man to do so in the history of yachting, Chris sailed single-handed around the globe, passing the Capes of Good Hope, Lewin and Horn. During this voyage, his yacht capsized 3 times in a storm force 10 wind. This resulted in a bent mizzen, broken crosstree and self-steering gear and a cabin filled with water. It took 2 weeks for the boat to be repaired. His journey of 35.424 nautical miles, it's 65,605 kilometers, lasted a total of 272 days with 3 stops en route. At the end of his voyage, crowds of thousands welcomed him back, first in Plymouth, UK, and then in Szczecin, Poland. His yacht Polonez was exhibited in Warsaw's main square, where thousands of people could come and see the boat. Later, Polonez was transported to Moscow by land and shown at international exhibitions. Chris became an international celebrity, but he still wanted more. Chris's next big journey was a voyage aboard the same yacht Polonez, this time sailing with his family through rivers and lakes in the US and across the North Atlantic Ocean. He sailed with his wife Eve and their 2 children, Jaś and Małgosia. The children were able to keep up their schooling as their parents turned into teacher and maintained the school curriculum. For the children, it was their best school year ever. This voyage was one of the most difficult for Chris because he had to share his ocean emotions with his family. Ocean emotions, as Chris says, are all the feelings related to long and uncomfortable trips in dangerous circumstances. He wrote about them in his books Ocean Feelings and Home Under Sail. However, these experiences with his family on board were very important to Chris, and eventually they led to the idea for his Class Afloat project. But before Class Afloat became a reality, there was an expedition to the Antarctic aboard STS Pogoria, a newly built barkentine. The sail training ship Pogoria is a barkentine that was built for the explicit purpose of training and educating students, mainly teenagers. in an ocean environment. Chris was the main initiator and coordinator of the building of Pogoria. There were many of discussions about the proposed rig for the new ship, but Chris convinced all the stakeholders to agree to his idea of barkentin. However, the process did not go smoothly. Pogoria was launched in an atmosphere of scandal. Why scandal? The building of the STS Pogoria was funded by Poland's national television channel, but this was during a time of change from communism to democracy in Poland, and building a new ship for young people was not an idea readily understood. To cut a long story short, the president of Polish National TV, who invested money into STS Pogoria's construction, was accused of embezzling funds, and innocent Pogoria was in the center of this fuss. So, to protect Pogoria from scandal and to earn some money, in the middle of the northern winter, Chris and crew undertook a voyage to an Antarctic research station where it is icy even in the summer. This was quite a risky expedition as Pogoria was not designed to sail in Antarctic waters. Fortunately, the Antarctic expedition itself was successful. On the way back, however, there was an accident when, as a result of defective radar, Pogoria collided in fog with a ship that did not sound the obligatory fog signals. No one was hurt, but in his position as captain, Chris was penalized, and as a sailor, he felt devastated. This did not break him, however. 2 years later, Chris started his next gigantic project, Class Afloat aboard STS Pogoria. Chris's Class Afloat was a totally new idea, and not just in Poland. The main goal of Chris's Class Afloat was to provide a full school year's education aboard a sailing ship during an ocean voyage. 6 classes were taught every day from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and during the rest of the day and night, the students worked the ship in a 4-hour watch system. For the first Class Afloat, Pogoria sailed from Poland through the Mediterranean to India and back around Africa. The youngsters aboard were able to learn, sail and work at the same time as seeing some of the world and experiencing the adventure of a lifetime. This first Chris's Class Afloat, which took place in 1983-1984, was a spectacular success. After that, there were many more Class Afloat voyages, including those with students from USA, Poland, and the USSR in 1988 and 1989. In those days, that kind of international cooperation was a new phenomenon because the world was still divided by the Iron Curtain. Yet, a 3-nation crew proved to be a very good team. There was also a Canadian version of Chris's Class Afloat, and Chris captained the initial leg across the Atlantic during the very first of these voyages. The Canadians had been inspired by Chris's Class Afloat when they created their own program, and they even used the same name and followed the same route. After several years of Chris's Class Afloat aboard STS Pogoria, the ship's new owner started blocking her accessibility. So, Chris started thinking about a new ship. This time he wanted to build a brig. In order to pay for the new ship, Chris and his foundation had to use donated materials combined with fundraising. It took 3 years to build this ship, the STS Frederick Chopin. Over the next few years, the Frederick Chopin was used for Class Afloat voyages with high school students, and after a change in her ownership, Chris was still employed as her captain. He then undertook voyages with university students. The Frederick Chopin took part in many tall ship races, starting with the 1992 Columbus race across the Atlantic. In that race, under Chris's command, she took 3rd place out of more than 100 participants. But this was still not the end of Chris's ambitions. In 1999, Chris sailed around the world again. This time, it was the east-west route with the trade winds and via the Panama Canal on the yacht Lady B. This yacht was 54 feet long and built for races with a crew of 12. Yet Chris still managed to handle this boat alone. He was 62 when he finished the voyage in Lady B's home port of Weba, becoming the first Pole to circumnavigate the globe twice single-handedly. In the meantime, the Frederick Chopin was bought by one of Chris's friends. Finally, after all these years, there was an opportunity to reactivate Chris's class afloat. In the meantime, Polones was abandoned until 2008, when she was refitted with significant changes to her interior. Having been a racing yacht previously, she now became a cruising yacht. In 2003, Chris retired from daily work, but it still was not the end of his private journey. He was still a captain on the STS Frederick Chopin, and he led his class afloat for almost 15 years. The main assumption of Chris's class afloat project was that it would be free of charge for students and therefore anyone could apply, regardless of their personal financial status. In order to qualify for a place on class afloat, youngsters had to undergo a year-long challenge for charity. However, his class afloat needed a sponsor, and it was becoming more and difficult to find one. At the same time, costs were rising. In 2017, after 25 years, Chris's class afloat was officially suspended. The main reason was the lack of funds.
Krzysztof Baranowski is 84 now, but he still wants to challenge the world.
And he wants to build a new sailing ship also. This is Chris's new project, the Polonia. The concept is ready and the plans have been drawn up by Tom Głowacki, a yacht designer from New Zealand. So far, though, no one in Poland is willing even to discuss the project, let alone provide funding. But Chris does not give up easily. He's also writing maritime prose and has already published 25 books, and he continues writing. Chris had said before that this is not the end of his story. What's more, there are many adventures and stories still untold.